Hello and welcome to the Insights of a Headhunter. I'm very, very excited to present today's guest, Mark Williams. Um, he is called Mr. LinkedIn. So, the person who knows more about LinkedIn than any other LinkedIn trainer whom I have met. And the most exciting thing is that he also has experience from the recruitment side. So, for anyone who hasn't heard about Mark Williams, you must have been living under a rock. But for those, please present yourself.
Thanks, Tiina. I'm not sure. There's probably people on this call who won't agree with that intro as knowing more than any other LinkedIn trainer. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's true. Or maybe I might have boasted that in the past at some stage, but that's a difficult thing to maintain, I think, with the amount of change that goes on and everything. But no, it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this because I obviously cover LinkedIn from a much broader aspect than just recruitment. But it's very much where I came from, as you said, and it's very much my original background. On the Mr. LinkedIn thing, can I just state, just to be clear, I do not call myself Mr. LinkedIn. You're entitled to call me whatever you want, and by the end of this call, you might be calling me something completely different. But it's obviously I can't stop people calling me Mr. LinkedIn if they wish to do so, and it's nice that they do. But officially, that is not what I should be known as.
And you have a wonderful podcast as well about LinkedIn, and it's called Informed. So anyone who wants to know more about LinkedIn, that's the resource to go to. So
Yes, absolutely, and we do cover recruitment sometimes in that, but again, just it is broader than just recruitment, but we do sometimes focus on recruitment.
And I had the pleasure to meet you in person last month in Birmingham at the Uplift Live conference. And you were talking about a topic that I really, really wanted to dig deeper into. So today's topic, we will be talking about LinkedIn recommendation tips. So tell me, what are the most common mistakes that people make with their LinkedIn recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I think recommendations are, if you just think about it, they're one of the oldest parts of a LinkedIn profile, been around for as long as I can remember, really. I think very, very early profiles had recommendations. They're actually one feature on LinkedIn that probably has got worse over time than better. There's probably other features that have done that as well. But they haven't really changed that much, have they? I mean, to be honest, they're I wouldn't say they've been completely ignored by LinkedIn, but it's a feature that they've sort of left alone and done very little with. But back in the day, don't know whether you can remember this, you used to be able to move your recommendations around. So,
Yes.
and which was good because only showing the last two, it used to be the last three as well, but only showing the last two could be a bit of an issue because, we want the thing to be seen by someone coming to our profile in the profile, not have to click to see a recommendation that we want them to see. And so you might have a situation where, I don't know, you're going for an interview and it's in a particular industry and you've got a recommendation from someone that you worked for in that industry, but it's the third one, so it doesn't show on the front of your profile. Of course, it used to be that we could move that to the top. And you can't do that anymore, unfortunately. You can untick the ones above it or one of the ones above it to bring it in and then change it again later. But that just seems like an unnecessary workaround when a perfectly legitimate and good feature that exists elsewhere. It's not like they don't have the technology. The kind of click and drag thing is absolutely possible in other areas of LinkedIn. They just decide to take that away for reasons that they never explained, as they never do. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of mistakes that people make with recommendations, I mean, the first one is actually ignoring it. Not thinking it's of value, coming up with a million and one excuses as to why they wouldn't ask for a recommendation. The second one, I think, is asking for recommendations from the wrong people. I guess you could never say anybody's wrong, but the context of a recommendor is quite important, I think. and you need to think about what you're trying to achieve on LinkedIn, and then dominate your recommendations from people who would fit the category of being likely to impress the people that you want to impress. So not you, but the people that you're looking to impress. So as a very simple example, if you were a job seeker, for instance, having a recommendation from, a colleague, your mate who sits across the desk from you has some value, but not as valuable as someone that you worked for who employed you, who sat across the desk from you in an interview and had to make a decision, which is always a gamble in recruitment, as to whether they wanted to take you on or not, and went through the thought process of strengths and weaknesses, things that could go wrong, what do they bring to the table, and then decided to go for it and send you an offer letter, or get HR to send you an offer letter. And then years later, they're now prepared to put in writing that that decision was a good one and that they're glad they made it. And I'm saying it in that way because when you think about it, that's kind of, if the right person is reading your profile, that's the way they're going to read it. When we read an Amazon review, we often are looking at a product and we're going, well, I don't know, is it a good product? Well, could be this, could be that. I don't really know because I've never bought it before, right? I'm not in a position to judge. And then you look at the reviews from people that in theory are able to judge. They've forked out their money. They've decided it was a good decision and they want to put it in writing that they think it is. Now, I know there are all kinds of cheats and hacks that go around Amazon reviews, particularly, not so much LinkedIn ones. But the context is there, isn't it? It's like this person was I'm about to interview you, right, for a job. Now, you might think that's a nervous thing for you. You might think that's a big day for you when you come for an interview. Of course, what you don't realize is that for me, the person interviewing, it's a pretty big day for me as well. I better get this right,
It's the same, yeah.
It's very costly. Candidates always, I think, misunderstand this. As someone that's been a candidate, been a recruiter, been the other side of the table as a line manager interviewing people as well, there's real pressure on it. You've got to get it right. And anything that I can grab hold of that's going to make me go, actually, that helps me make the decision, is going to be really helpful to me and get me across the line and making that decision. So if I could go and just, as I read your profile, and look down and go, oh, that's this person. I don't know them. I mean, I might know them, actually. That could be beneficial. Or I might not know them, but they're a second-tier connection and I know someone that potentially does know them. So again, that could be even better. But I might not know them at all, They may just be a complete stranger, but from a similar company, in a similar industry, at a similar level to me. And the main difference between them and me is that they have interviewed this person in the past. They took the decision to recruit them and it turned out to be a good one. And that helps me. As I read that helps me. That makes me feel more comfortable about taking this risk, because it is always a risk that I'm about to take. And that's the power of it as far as I'm concerned. So people kind of, A, they don't do it. They just don't think the power of it. And B, when they do it, they miss the opportunity by getting them from the wrong people.
I think it was really interesting what you said, how the recommendation is written. I never thought about it, but there is a big difference if you inherit the team with people, or if you were the decision maker hiring this person and they brought so much value, and 5 years later you're very happy with the decision and wish them all the best and success in a new place. So that's a really, really good tip. And I, as a headhunter, I always read all the recommendations on someone's profile. It goes quite quickly to scan a profile. So
yeah,
both the written and received ones. But you said also as a line manager, you would be reading the recommendations.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I'd be looking at both. If I was a line manager in recruitment, if I was a candidate going for an interview, or a recruiter considering someone to put forward for an interview, I'd be looking at both given and received as well.
Yeah.
Of course, the given bit is the bit that people miss, isn't it? Because they don't. It's partly it's the received that's showing the profile, and you have to click something to go to the given. And of course, a lot of people either don't know it exists or they see it all the time. It's like a lot of things. When we're looking at a screen, we see things all the time, but we don't necessarily click on them. They just become part of the profile, but not a part we ever go to. And I think given recommendations fall into that category. But if you were to change your habits and just click on given, you'll find an absolute goldmine of information.
Yes.
If you're recruiting, if you're a recruiter and you're recruiting a line manager, someone that has people working for them, to understand more about them and how they value people actually gives you a real insight to them as a manager. What kind of things do they value in other people? What kind of qualities do they value in other people? And does that align with the kind of role that you're looking to recruit? There's an awful lot you can find out about when we read a profile. I think we're quite used to, and I think as recruiters, what we tend to do is we develop a habit of scan reading a profile, looking for hard facts. Do they fit the brief? Have they got this? Can I tick this box, and this box? But we're not always getting a feel for the character. We're just getting hard facts, right? But of course, we know, or certainly anybody that's been in recruitment for any amount of time, and I was in recruitment for 20 years, you know that the thing that gets someone the job over the line is more them than what they've done, right? What they've done gets them on the shortlist, maybe gets them an interview as well.
Yeah.
But the one that gets the job offer is the one that in interview demonstrates a character that is defined as a good fit for that organization or that team. And I think most people understand that when recruiting. If they've ever done recruitment before, they understand that. And that's the magic bit, isn't it? That's the bit where you can really set yourself aside. If you're recruiting for a line manager and you're coming up with a shortlist for that line manager, you might have 10 candidates that tick the boxes. So, but you've only got to put 4 in for an interview, let's say. So what you're looking for is that differentiator in terms of character and personality. Interviews obviously help with that, but not always. An interview often is, a process that is a bit of a game, a bit of an act by them, trying to deliver what you want, what they think you want. And sometimes it's a bit of a game of cat and mouse to try and open them up and really understand who they are. And my point with recommendations, and it's just one tool, of course, there are many that we can use, given recommendations, is that when someone is asked to write a recommendation, what they typically do is they kind of sit back and they go, okay, right, Tiina, let me have a think about Tiina, right? And they will recount moments of their experience with that person. And then they'll come up with words and they'll use those words when describing that person. And that's really insightful. That really gives you a sense of who that person is and what they value in people. So yeah, it's a real goldmine given recommendations.
Yeah. So what they say about other people, they actually say about themselves, meaning the things that they value.
Yeah.
So that's how you can understand about their personality and values. And also, if the recommendation is written well, you get context as well, the type of projects they are working with, and all of that. What would you say as a tip to write a good recommendation? How should a person structure it?
Yeah, I mean, I just alluded to it in a way because I actually think that's the best way of doing it. Let me just first of all tackle the issue of prescribed recommendations, because this comes up a lot when I talk about recommendations. Typical question people ask me is, should I write it and then send it to them? And I'm like, no, please don't do that. I mean, I'm not against you saying, can you recommend me? And just to highlight a few areas, please write whatever you want. But if I could highlight some things that I thought were applicable to our time when I worked for you or whatever, that's okay, I guess. Just some pointers, so that can be helpful to the person writing the recommendation. But don't write something that they can then copy and paste. I know you in theory, and they may ask you for that as well. They may say, oh, can you make, because again, if we're picking the right person, they're often at a senior level, right? If they're at a senior level, they're very busy. You're asking them to do something that's going to take them a bit of time. So we feel a bit guilty about that. We really want them to do it. And we're conscious that, they're quite kind of like, oh, all right then, it's like, so it's very tempting to go, I'll tell you what, I'll write it for you if you want, just to make it easy. And you can then copy and paste it, So it's either manipulative, I want you to write what I want you to write, or it's very apologetic. I'm very scared about asking you, so I'll try and make it easy for you. Neither of which is good and doesn't reflect well on you at all. Just let them write it, And the line I like to use is, look, it doesn't matter how much you write or what you write, right? Just be honest. And honestly, if you write one line, it doesn't matter. It's fine. The most important thing is that it's from you, which is a nice compliment, right? And invariably, you'll find them write far more than one line. If you say just one line is fine, but that's the way to make it easy. If you feel guilty about the time that it's going to take them, just say, just write one line. It's no problem at all. They won't. They'll write more than one line, but better to come
I
from
have
them.
seen one-line recommendations, and then I'm almost like, maybe it would have been better if you wouldn't have written anything, because this looks just so not generous at all.
Yeah, but I would dispute that slightly, in that if that recommendation was from the CEO of a fast-growing large organization, the context of that, I'd read that and go, busy guy, right? They are going to be really busy. And the fact that they've taken even a small amount of time to write a recommendation for you is seriously, that's an honor, right? So I don't know. It depends who it is, for sure. It's rare that happens, but when it does, to me, if you gave me a choice between, a really long recommendation from someone who's kind of a little bit influential, but not massively, versus, a one-liner from someone with real impact, senior decision maker, impressive, right? I'd pick that one all day long. I think the person who writes it is more important than what they write. Oh, of course, you want both, but if you had to have one, it would be the person rather than what they write. Because, of course, the other thing is, you got to think about the impact on. So we've got different parties involved in this process, but the recruiter may well be looking for, as you say, words that they're using that helps us understand them as an individual, helps us understand both parties really better. That's a bit more in depth. Quite often a line manager, the actual person doing the recruitment, they go to the recommendations and they look at a recommendation, they see it's from her. Wow, she's impressive. That's it. I won't bother reading anymore. I won't bother reading the rest. That's it for me. If that person's recommended them, then they must be good. Yeah. So you see what I mean? So, but in terms of how to write one, going back to your question, ask someone to write it, give them the opportunity to write it themselves. If you're asked to write one, then my advice would be, look, just sit back, look at their profile, remember your time with them, think about the qualities, make sure everything you write is completely honest. You're not doing it just to help them, right? And this is an important point. So it's very easy this is not a skill endorsement, right? This is a genuine, you putting your neck on the block. This could catch up with you. If you write something that isn't true or massively exaggerated, it's going to be there forever. You need to make sure that what you're delivering on that person's profile is authentic, real, and genuine, and you can back it up, right? So that's important to remember. I think most people would do that. But at the same time, and I know there are people that would disagree with this, and there's certainly a lot of HR people out there that would be horrified. But, be yourself and write a really good narrative about what you valued in that person and make it that it's you. So don't speak in kind of corporate way. Don't say
like robot.
But also like, I'm representing the company. You are representing the company. Of course you are. But what we're really saying here, and the official line on the LinkedIn recommendation is, it's a recommendation of one person to another. And they both represent companies, but one person who represents a company is writing a recommendation on their opinion about that individual. And yes, they are working for a company and that does represent the company, but it's mainly representing themselves and their opinion. And because, as we've all seen with recommendations, you'll look at someone's recommendations and you'll see a recommendation, as you're going through from, I don't know, 5 years ago, and that person no longer works at that company. In fact, they might have worked for 2 companies since then, right? Since they wrote that recommendation, but that person still has that same opinion and it still counts, but they no longer represent that company. So when you're writing a recommendation, write it from you, not from the company.
And would you recommend signing off with the job title and the company where they are working currently, because it might change if they go to different companies?
Yeah, I mean, there is it's actually a good tip, that, because although it does say at the top, worked under at whatever, I'm not sure it stands out well enough, does it? I don't know sure that the clarity's there with that. So it's probably either start or finish. So, in my capacity as finance director for ABC, Tiina worked for me in the position of, you could do that either at the beginning or at the end just to give it some context. But try and be less formal and more descriptive at their character. At the end of the day, it's great to say they've got strong skills in X, Y, and Z, and that's helpful. But to be honest, my view is, I'd be interested in what you think of this. My view would be a recruiter and a line manager won't have got this far if they didn't have the right skills, right? So that's, to get to the recommendation bit, you're already sold, right? On have they got the right background? Now what we're trying to understand is, are they a good fit? And I often think that recommendations are read, I'm referring to job seekers here, when you have a recommendation on your profile and you get an interview, they don't read it. There's a good chance they don't read it before the interview. They read it, well, it is before the interview, but literally just before the interview. I'll tell you a story on this one. This isn't a recruitment story, but it backs up my point. Good friend of mine who's massively into recommendations and actually really switched me onto them many, many years ago. And he had 100, he's got over 200 now, but he had 150 or something at the time. And I went, you got a lot of recommendations. His name's Matt. I said, Matt, you got a lot of recommendations. He said, oh, I love them. He said, I win business from them all the time. And I said, that's interesting. So why do you love them so much? He said, well, there was this defining moment for me. And he said, I went to pitch for this business with this massive company. Now, all right, this is a sales example, but a pitch interview, not a lot different, right? And he's in this pitch and he's in Canary Wharf. It's one of the large banks, right? Huge contract. And he's sat in this office overlooking Canary Wharf, very plush office, right? Very senior decision maker. And he's sat there talking to him. The meeting's going okay. They're only 10 minutes into the meeting. And this person that he had a meeting with gets a call from his PA. And he puts the phone down. He goes, I'm really sorry about this. Very unprofessional of me, but something really urgent's cropped up. You're okay to stay there, but do you mind if I just pop out for 5 minutes? I need to go and see something about something. So Matt went, yeah, fine, no problem at all. So off he goes. And it was more like 10 minutes, right? Now, you're sat in someone's office, right? And for 10 minutes is a long time, right? When you're sat in someone's office and their computer screen is there and it's at an angle where you can kind of see it, but you can't really, right? It's just at that sort of angle where there's enough for you to go, oh, if I just leant forward a little bit, and he looked around and it wasn't, there was no one could see in the office. And so he just leant forward a bit like that and had a look. It was just curious to see what was it. He said, I'd seen bits of this computer screen right from the start of the meeting. And now I'm sat there for 10 minutes. He said, after about 8 minutes, I gave in and I leant forward fully and had a good look at it. And he said, I was gobsmacked. My LinkedIn profile was open on my recommendations page. And he went, wow. So the last thing this person read before I walked into his office was recommendations about me from other people just like him. And he said, when you think about it, he said, the meeting went well, but So I'm sat in the tube on the way home, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking. So in reality, when I turned up at that massive tall office and I announced myself in reception, and they said he'll be 5 minutes, he'll come and get you, or his PA will come and get you. Of course, it's it's a big lift, one of these buildings. So it took a while. He said, as I'm waiting before his PA comes to get me, and whilst I'm walking along the corridors and in the lift and up and along the corridor, all that time, he's reading my LinkedIn profile. And the last thing he reads is my recommendations. So in theory, this meeting started the minute I introduced myself in reception, and he went, "Who? Oh yeah," and he, which is what happens, especially at a senior level, right? People are busy, and oh yeah, I've got an interview, haven't I? Right, okay, who is this? Right, and they look up your LinkedIn profile, and they quickly scan, read bits of it. Okay, yeah, right, okay. Let's have a look at the recommendations, because I haven't got out to meet this person, so let's really understand them. So that's the way he saw it. He said, basically this sales pitch had already started before I was even there, right? By what they were reading about me in my LinkedIn recommendations. And that's the power here. So just think about it that way.
Yeah. And another question that I have for you is, does it make a difference if somebody, all their recommendations are from a month ago, and now they're looking for a new job if they were made redundant? Or is it better to have recommendations once a year for the past 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the latter is better, but that shouldn't put you off trying to get them. Now you're looking for a job.
Yeah.
And I would describe LinkedIn as like that as a whole, right? So one of my biggest criticisms of people when they are highly active on LinkedIn because they're looking for a job is this is not a job board, right? This is a network of business professionals. And if you want to just leave it, walk out the room and come back when you need it because you need a job, then expect it not to go as well for you, right? And it's the same with recommendations. You can't suddenly start building a network. You can't suddenly start asking for recommendations. You can't suddenly start trying to engage with people on LinkedIn just because now you're out of a job and you need a new job. I mean, that's not the right way to look at it, right? This is a platform and a community that you can get involved in all the time. I'm not suggesting you have to be there every day, but certainly regularity, regularly logging in, engaging with people, asking for recommendations, updating your profile, all of that stuff. If you keep that going on a regular basis, then you're far more likely to get more out of LinkedIn, full stop. But yeah, so I mean, but if someone has done that and they haven't asked for any recommendations and they've neglected their profile and they've done nothing on LinkedIn for 2 years and they suddenly go, "Oh, I need a job," then look, it's not a reason to not do it. You do the best you possibly can in the circumstances that you've got. It doesn't look desperate or anything like that, but it's obviously not as good as if you've got recommendations going back over a number of years.
Yeah. So start where you are today, and the best would be if you would have started 15 years ago. Let us go over to the comments. So we have Nigel Cliff saying, "Pushing to the front row, elbows everywhere." So
Nigel Cliff. Who's Nigel Cliff?
Well, he was also a speaker at Uplift Live.
I know exactly who Nigel Cliff is.
And according to Crystal Knows, our personalities are triplets. Yes.
Wasn't that interesting? I found that fascinating, actually, and especially that John was so different from us as well.
And we have Sonal Behel saying hello from Brussels.
Hi, Sonal.
Yes. She has her show Supercharged Fridays, every Friday at 2 p.m. Brussels time. I will be joining her this Friday. So see you soon.
I love Sonal's comment there about the recommendations and say which brainiac came up with that. I love that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are so many decisions that LinkedIn make where you go, why on earth did they do that? What on earth could be a reason for that? I guess it's one of my hobbies is trying to figure these things out and understand exactly where they're coming from. But I'm quite sure sometimes it's for no good reason at all, and nobody could actually really answer that. That happened so long ago. The person that did it's probably left, and they didn't even realize it's still like that. I mean, that sounds awful saying that.
That
They
it
would
would
be
be
so
very
incompetent.
useful. Yeah.
It would be great to be able to move it. Absolutely.
Yeah. We have another Uplift Live speaker with us, Gillian Whitney. Lovely to see you
Oh,
both sharing the stage together again today. Yay!
yeah. I feel like I'm being a well-behaved child after Gillian told us all we needed to be doing lives at Uplift Live. Although this isn't my live, obviously, but I think it's brownie points, isn't it, Gillian, for doing one?
Yeah, and she's doing one in 1.5 hours live
Oh wow,
from the UK. So make sure
very good.
to tune in. We have another live guest from Gillian's live, Joe Edge. I've been both sides as an interviewee and interviewer, and I totally agree. And this is the thing. People know that they need to ask for recommendations, but they feel so shy about reaching out and doing it. So
Yeah, so I've got a tip on how to ask for them as well, which I think works really well. So here's one of the issues with recommendations is that people make the mistake of requesting them through LinkedIn, which I think is the wrong way to do it, and I'll explain why. So what people tend to do is they go to the profile. Obviously, the person has to be a first-tier connection. They go to the More menu and they click on Request a Recommendation. They write something and hope something's going to happen just out the blue like that, right? Well, first of all, when was the last time you spoke to this person? Right? They just receive a recommendation request out the blue. It's a bit odd, isn't it? So think about it like that. But also, pick up the phone or go and see them or do something that's a bit more personable.
yeah,
Maybe send a DM. That would be the worst, but certainly not a request through LinkedIn. Maybe send a DM and get back in touch and then say, can we arrange a time to have a chat on the phone? I want to speak to you. Maybe say to them, look, I'm actively looking for a job. I'd really appreciate asking you a few questions. A bit of advice would be helpful at this stage, if you don't mind, something like that. And then when you're on that call, then say to them, look, I was looking at updating my LinkedIn profile, and it struck me that out of all the amazing people that I've worked for in my career, you don't want to overhand this, but all the amazing people that I've worked for in my career, I put you right at the top, and I've not got a recommendation from you. What's that all about? So, any chance you could write me one? Yeah, something like that. I mean, you got to do it in your own style that works for you, right? But make sure that they understand that it's a compliment. Right? You're not begging them for it. It's a compliment, right? This person has been pivotal in your career. And if they haven't been, then they're probably not the right person to ask. They've been pivotal in your career, and you want them to know that. And so your compliment to them is you'd like them to write you a recommendation for your profile, because you'd be honored to have their name on your profile, right? To then ask, and then assuming you've got that right, they'll agree and they'll say, yeah, no problem at all, Mark. More than happy to do that for you. Fantastic. Great. And then nothing happens, right? And this is the problem people have with recommendations, because, well, what happens then? So we're talking senior line manager says, right, okay, I'll write that recommendation. Right, little note here, write recommendation for Mark. And then, by the end of that day, there's so many scribbles on that notepad that's got lost amongst all the rest of it. Or they just got distracted and something else occurred and they just didn't remember to do it. Or, and this I think is more common, they go, oh, I need to write this recommendation. Right. Okay, let's go to Mark's profile. Let's do it. Let's get it done now. Right. So they go to your profile. Well, where's the recommend button? This person isn't an experienced LinkedIn user. They wouldn't know where to go. Now you can go right down to the recommendations section, but it's a bit of a scroll. And they're like, oh, it wasn't that easy to me. So move on. And that's what happens, right? Either way, whatever the reason, they quite often don't happen, even when someone said they're more than happy to. So that's why you didn't request through LinkedIn, because here's the deal. What you then do is you go, right, okay, leave it a week or so, and then check if they've done it or not. No, they haven't. Great. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to their profile, click on the More menu, request recommendation. You can type something in there. It's entirely down to you what you write, but it would be something along the lines of, not, why haven't you done that recommendation for me? More like something along the lines of, thank you ever so much for agreeing to do this recommendation for me. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. right? Something like that. And then it goes to their inbox. Now, then they receive it in their inbox. And of course, that may well be by email as well, depending on their settings. Then they see it in their inbox, and all they have to do is click on a little link and it's done. They just click on it, write something, and it's done. They don't have to know where to go or anything. So you're making it easy for them. The problem is if you request it in the first place through LinkedIn, where do you go from there, right? So it's better to request it in person and then follow it up with a request that way. When you do it that way, you get so many more recommendations, a much better way of actually undertaking the process.
Yes, definitely much better way to do it. We have a question from David. Not sure if recommendations are that useful, as recruiters will still want to provide references before offering the job. Those references are most likely to be the same people who have recommended you on LinkedIn. Ooh.
Yeah, but that's at the end of the process, right?
Yes.
What we're talking about here is at the beginning of the, or early on in the process, when it's about getting us onto the shortlist and getting us the interview and facilitating a better interview. So all of those things are about, from a job seeker's point of view anyway, about trying to improve and get you further down the process. As recruiters, which I think is David's point, it's what I said before, really, you can make judgments about people by their received and given recommendations. I mean, you have to put the context to it. Of course, you have to go, well, okay, that person might have thought that, but I'm not sure if I agree with that. But it's an opinion, and it's something that you can use to balance what you're trying to, the judgment that you're trying to make of someone. But it's useful information and potentially valuable to you. Also, the other thing is, as a recruiter, and I've done this before, is it's a bit naughty in a way. Well, it's not naughty, but I've looked at a recommendation on a candidate's profile. I've looked at the line manager who gave the recommendation. I've gone to their profile and looked at their given recommendations and found a different candidate. Because I'm thinking, that's quite interesting what you said about them. I think that's quite good, right? And so it does not put me off that candidate, don't get me wrong. But then I've gone to their given recommendations. And I thought, oh, actually, that person they've recommended there, they look all right as well, actually. And then I've gone to them. It's not exactly a sourcing secret, that, is it? But it's just the kind of thing that happens. So again, if we're looking at it from a recruiter's perspective, looking at the recommendation section has value.
Yes. Yeah. And we have Kevin D. Turner joining us, also one of the speakers from Uplift Live. It feels like it's a global party with the speakers joining. So great to meet you in person as well, Kevin. And before we finish, we have a dear friend of mine, Elsa, a very good hint, Mark. Thanks for all the information provided so far. Bravo, Tiina, for offering us this live. So it's my pleasure, and thank you everyone for coming here. Follow Mark on LinkedIn, listen to the podcast. You can go back many years to get valuable information about different topics about LinkedIn. So final words that you would like to say before we end?
Yeah, only really just to reinforce the points we've made about the value of recommendations. I mean, my talk at Uplift Live was much broader than that, about research, full stop. But recommendations are a big part of that, and well worth spending time looking at. And if anybody from LinkedIn's listening, improve them, work on them, get someone assigned to develop recommendations further.
They are important. Thank you so much for coming, Mark. I really appreciate you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.